How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're starting Daf Ches, Daf 8 of Masechta Shevuos. Friends, friends. Okay, so as I said yesterday, we got a bunch to do on Daf Zayin and Beis because what we got up to on Daf Zayin and Beis is basically this big brisa. So we basically read through the brisa, which basically will get us more or less close to the bottom of Zayin and Beis. And then the entire rest of the daf is analyzing that brisa. So as I explained yesterday, I just really think that it makes sense to learn the brisa before, together with the analysis. Otherwise, we probably have to review the brisa again today. So I figure let's just do it all zusammen, all at once. Okay, here we go. Without further ado, okay, Zayin Amud Beis at the two dots I'd say about 10 lines in to the Amid, the two dots. Tonu Rabbanon v'chiper ala kodesh mitumis b'nei Yisrael v'gomer. This is talking about the Sa'ir Hanaise Bifnim. The Sa'ir Hanaise Bifnim. Who could remind me what the role of the Sa'ir Hanaise Bifnim was in our Mishnah? The answer is by Yesh Ba'yediyah B'tchila ve'ein Ba'yediyah B'soif. When he had a yediyah initially, and then there was a lapse, and he didn't yet remember it. Once he remembers it, of course, he has to bring a korban ole v'yori. So long as he hasn't yet remembered it, so he hasn't remembered. There's no yediyah basov. So the Sa'ir Hanaise Bifnim is tole. We're going to learn at the end of today's daf what that means exactly. That it's tole, that it throws things into a pending state. What's the point of the pending state? But akoponim, this is what we're talking about today. Sa'ir Hanaise Bifnim, and why that is tole for Yesh Ba Yediyah Batchila ve'ein Ba Yediyah Basof. So Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, v'chiper ala mikdash mitumis b'nei Yisrael. So by the Sa'ir Hanaise Bifnim, it says that it will atone for the v'chiper ala kodesh. It will atone for the holies. Mitumis b'nei Yisrael v'chulei, from the impurities of the Yidden. Yesh li bo inyon zeh, so I would have thought lahavi to include shalosh tumis, the following 3 tumas. I would have thought to say that the following 3 tumas are, atoned for by the Sa'ir Hanaise Bifnim. Tumas avodah zarah v'tumas gilui arayos v'tumas shvichus dam. I would have thought that the Sa'ir Hanaise Bifnim atones for if a person became impure with avodah zarah, or impure with gilui arayos, or impure with murder. By avodah zarah omer, because after all, by avodah zarah it says liman tameh es mikdashi, right? So as not to impurify my mikdash. Begilui arayos su omer ushmartem es mishmarti levilti asos michukis atu evas v'gomer v'lo setamu baim. Don't become tameh with them by gilui arayos. B'shvichus damim omer v'lo setameh es haaretz. So we see avodah zarah, shvichus damim, gilui arayos are all types of tumas. So I would have thought that when the pasuk says v'chiper ala kodesh mitumis b'nei Yisrael, I would think that the Sa'ir Hanaise Bifnim atones for avodah zarah, gilui arayos, and shvichus damim. Yachol al gimel tumis halal yeh Sa'ir mechaper. So is it possible that, wait, excuse me 1 second. It was something in my tooth that was driving me nuts. Okay, where are we? Yachol al gimel tumis halalu yeh Sa'ir mechaper. So is this possible? Is it possible that the Sa'ir Hanaise Bifnim will atone for avodah zarah, gilui arayos, and shvichus damim? Talmud lomar mi tumis b'nei Yisrael, from the impurities of the Yidden, v'lo kol tumos, not all impurities, a subset of impurities. Mamatzinu shechilek akosuf michlal kol tumis. And where do we see that the Torah separates a subset of tumas? And we're going to, as I said, the rest of the daf we're going to be sort of analyzing this brisa. So we're going to learn more about where we see this subset. But okay, let's suffice for now to say that where do we see the Torah have a subset of tumas? Avi omer tumas mikdash v'kodashov. The answer is by tumas mikdash v'kodashov. Afkan, here also by Sarah Naisa Bifnim, we're talking about tumas mikdash v'kodashov. We're talking about tumas mikdash v'kodashov. Divei Reb Yehuda. This is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Reb Shimon, Omer says Reb Shimon, mimekama hu moch. Reb Shimon says we don't need to learn it out from a different place, right? Reb Yehuda says, well, where do we see in some other place that there's a subset of tumas? No, it says Reb Shimon, we can learn it out from the pasuk itself. Reb Shimon Omer mimekama hu moch. We can learn it out from the pasuk itself. The pasuk says v'chipar ala kodesh mitumos. V'chipar ala kodesh mitumos. Mitumos shel kodesh. Tumas of Kodesh. When the pasuk itself says v'chipar ala Kodesh mitumas shel Kodesh, tumas mikdash v'kodashu, and continues Reb Shimon yachol al kol tuma sheba Kodesh yeisayir zeh mechaper. Says Reb Shimon, is it possible that the Sarah Naisa Bifnim is mechaper for all tumas mikdash v'kodashu? Maybe even yesh ba'yidiyah b'tchila of the yesh ba'yidiyah b'sof. Maybe would it also be mechaper for that? The pasuk also says from the peshas are intentional sins, and l'chol chatasim and their chatoses. Chatoyim dumya dipshoyim. That when we're saying that the Sarah Naisa Bifnim will be mechaper, or in this case Tola, it's for chatoyim that are similar to pshoyim. Ma pshoyim she'enam b'nei korban. Just like for an intentional sin, you cannot bring a korban for that. Avchatoyim she'enam b'nei korban. So also it atones for sins that you would not bring, right? So when we say ala kodesh, right? So we're talking about sins that you would not bring a korban for. Now, yesh ba'idiyah batchila v'yesh ba'idiyah basof, you do bring a korban. You bring a korban olav yored. So it is not mechaper for that. Rather, it is toleh for yesh ba yediyah batchila ve'ein ba yediyah basof. U'minayin liyesh ba yediyah batchila ve'ein ba yediyah basof. Shesar is a toleh, and the Gemara is going to explain why we're reiterating this. But okay, so now the brisa continues, and how do we know that when there is yediyah batchila and there's no yediyah basof, shesar is a toleh, that this sa'ir is Tola, the Sarah Naisa Bifnim is Tola. Talmud Omar l'chol chatosam chayvei chatos b'mashma. Then when it says l'chol chatosam, it's talking about sins that will ultimately lead to a korban. Right, l'chol chatosam, right? Sins that will ultimately lead to a korban. For example, yesh ba'idiyah batchila ve'ein ba'idiyah basof. If ultimately he remembers that he was tummy and he ate kachim or went into the mikdash, then he will bring a korban olav yored. So because it is a predicament that ultimately leads to a korban, so long as he hasn't had that yediyah basov, so for that the Sarah Naisa Bifnim will be toile. Okay, fine. Give all the now. For the beginning of our analysis, Amar Mar, we had said earlier, Yesh li ba'inyan ze lohavi gimel tumis. I would have thought to include the following three tumas that they would be atoned for by the Sarah Naisa Bifnim. Tumas avodah zarah, v'tumas gilui arayos, v'tumas shvichus dam. Hay avodah zarah echidami. I don't understand. In what world would you think that the Sarah Naisa Bifnim would be mechaper for avodah zarah? Ibn Mezid, if he served avodah zarah intentionally, bar ketolo, he's chayv skila for that, as we know from Masechtas and Ejini b'shogeg. If it was by accident, bar korbanis, so he has to bring a korban. He has to bring a korban for that. So how would in what scenario would the Sarah Naisa Bifnim be mechaper for avodah zarah? What was the havamina? And for the Gemara, b'mezid v'lo asube. Well, what if he did avodah zarah b'mezid, but they didn't warn him, so therefore he couldn't get skila? So you can't give him skila. You also can't bring a korban because it was b'mezid. B'shogig v'lo isidale. Or if he served avodah zarah by accident, but he was unaware that he actually served the avodah zarah, so he didn't know to bring a korban b'chal. So in those scenarios, I would have thought that the Sarah Naisa B'fnim could be Mechaper. Okay. Gili Arayas Nami. Okay, what's the scenario by Gili Arayas where we would have the Havamina that the Sarah Naisa B'fnim should be Mechaper? Hey Chidami I b'mezid. If he did avoid this Gili Arayas intentionally, Barktolahu, he would be Chayiv Misa, assuming that, it's something that you'd be Chayiv like Skila or Sreifa for. If it was by accident by Korbanu, so then you would have to bring a Korban. So again, in what scenario would the Sarah Naisa B'fnim atone? What's the Havamina? Well, b'mezid v'lo asube, if it was intentional and they didn't warn him, so we wouldn't kill him for that. B'shogeg v'lo yisyadalei, or if it was by accident and he was unaware that he didn't realize that he was in violation of anything and that he would have to bring a korban, so the Sarah Naisa B'fnim, I would have the Havamina to say, would atone for a gilerais in those scenarios. Shvichus damim, and similarly we ask by murder, nami echidami, what would be the scenario that you would think that Sarah Naisa B'fnim would atone? If he killed intentionally, so we slice off his head. And if it was by accident, of course, from Masechta Makis that he goes to the ear miklat. So b'mezid v'loy asrbe, if it was intentional but they didn't warn him, so therefore we can't slice off his head. B'shoigeg v'loy siydalei, if it was by accident and or he killed by accident, and I guess he was unaware that he killed by accident, I guess. So right in those cases he's not going to be killed. It's not going to go to an ear miklat. Inami, alternatively, b'hanech d'la b'negolos ninu. Right, there are scenarios. Right, for example, if we said, right, what was it? Dole b'chavis. So then we said that, right, if it was upwards, an upwards motion, so then you would not need to go to your miklat, but and the Sarah Naisa B'fnim would be mechaper. We said earlier, Yachol al shalish tumas halalu yehisair mechaper. So okay, so we said, so could it be that the Sarah Naisa B'fnim would be mechaper for avodah zarah, gili arayos, shvichus damim? Talmud Lomar, it says mi tumos v'lo kol tumos. It says a subset of tumas from tumas, not all tumas. Mamatzinu shechilek ha'kosuv michlal kol ha'tumos b'tumos mikdash v'kodashav. Well, we see that where is a scenario where we have a subset of tumas by tumas mikdash v'kodashav. Afkan, so here also by Sarah Naisa B'fnim, it's for tumas mikdash v'kodashav. Afkan tumas mikdash v'kodashav. Divrei Yehuda, that's Yehuda's opinion. My chilek, when we say that there's a subset of tumas, and that is tumas mikdash v'chodashav, for what? Demaisi b'olav yored. Well, tumas mikdash v'chodashav, as we learned about, I think it was yesterday. Well, I mean, we know from the Mishnah, but we also learned, the details about it yesterday. That I think it was yesterday that you bring a korban olav yored. That by right that tumas mikdash v'kodashav is unique. That you bring a korban olav yored, so it's also unique in that the Sarah Naisa B'fnim atones for it, or in this case is tola, it pens. Ema avodah zarah. But what about avodah zarah? We just said avodah zarah is called tuma, and I'll say that avodah zarah is unique, and I would say that the Sarah Naisa B'fnim could taka atone for avodah zarah. My chilek, what's unique about avodah zarah? Demaisi seira v'lei kispa. Normally a korban chatas, you have a choice. You could bring either an u or a gota. Is that what we said? I think we said yesterday a gota, right? A gota? No, a gotis. I think we said a gotis. You bring in an u. You could use it for korban chatas. You have a choice, either an u or a gotis. But over here you have to bring a gotis. So therefore, avodah zarah is unique in that way. So maybe it's saying that Sarah Naisa B'fnim is mechaper for avodah zarah. So Rav Kahana onan chilek lahakol kaminan v'hay chilek lahachmiru. Yeah, but the thing is that we are coming to be lenient, right? Because the whole concept of Sira Anaisa Bifnim, the whole concept that in individuals, that an individual can get atonement by a communal offering, right? Normally, if a person sins, they have to bring their own korban, right? Their own korban to get a kapara. But here, they're getting kapara. They're kind of, just joining the bandwagon. Kilu, the Sira Anaisa Bifnim is being offered from communal funds, and here he's just kind of getting atoned by it. Doesn't have to purchase his own offering, so it's a leniency over here, and therefore it would make sense to include Tumas Mikdash v'Kodashav, where we see that there is a leniency, i.e., you can offer a korban ole v'yored. So also it makes sense to include them in the leniency of Sara and Isa Bifnim, as opposed to by the korban, the chatas of avodah zara. The uniqueness of that is that it's more stringent, in that you're unable to bring an u, you have to bring a gotis. So and therefore I can't be talking about avodah zara. Ve'ema yoledes. Okay, but what about a yoledes? The chilek demaisik or olav yard. A yoledes is also unique in that by yoledes the korban, right? As we learned in Mamish, for me it's this week's parsha. For the time this comes out, it'll be last week's parsha. But Chevre, we have a lot of double parshas coming up. Tazria Mitzora, followed by Achreimos Kedoshim. Then you have Emor, you got kind of a single parsha, and then Bahar B'Chukosai, lots of doubles coming up. Akopanim. So we learn in Parshas Tazria about the 40 days for a boy, the 80 days for a girl, at the end of which she brings a korban, Yoledes brings a korban ole ve'yored. So we see that Yoledes is unique. So maybe the Sora Naisa B'Fnim is for Yoledes, that if she hasn't yet offered a korban ole ve'yored and Yom Kippur comes, that'll atone for her. She doesn't have to bring a korban ole ve'yored anymore. Amar Rav Oshaya l'chol chatosam v'lo l'chol tumosam. Says that Rav Oshaya points out that in the pasuk it says l'chol chatosam, to their sins. Now, a yoledes is not a sinner. She is impure, but she is not a sinner, and therefore the Sara Nasa Bifnim is not talking about a yoledes. So the Reb Shimon ben Yochai, Tomer yoledes nami chotes he. What about according to Reb Shimon ben Yochai, who says that yoledes is a chotah, a chotas? Why is she a chotas? Because when she's giving birth and she's in pain, she swears that she's never going to sleep with her husband ever again. So then, and therefore she's considered a sinner for doing that. So, Ma'ika lemeimar, so then she is a sinner. So can't we say that Sara Naisa B'Fnim is talking about a yoledes? Reb Shimon the Taimi Dama Mimakamu Muchra. Well, if you remember, who's the one who argues on Rabbi Yehuda? Right now we're discussing Rabbi Yehuda's opinion with we thought Avodah Zarah, Gilei Shvichus Damim, right? And then we said, no, it's from the subset. That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Who argues on Rabbi Yehuda? Reb Shimon. Okay, so we don't need to explain Rabbi Yehuda according to Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon doesn't agree with Rabbi Yehuda's mahalach anyways, so Reb Shimon's got his own mahalach. Let's keep him out of it. Ve'ema mitzayra. What about a mitzora? What about a mitzora? That a mitzora also brings a korban ole v'yored at the end of being a mitzora. So let's say that Sara Naisa B'Fnim is for him. Rav Oshaya l'chol chatosim l'chol tumosim. Says Rav Oshaya again, nochamal, that it's for sins, not for tumas, and a mitzora is not a sinner. Reb Shmuel bar Nachmani do Omar al shiva dvarim negoyim bayin. What about according to Reb Shmuel bar Nachmani, who says that there's a reason why a person gets tsaras? It's because he sinned, so he is a sinner. So Michael and Meimar hasim negia de ikaper lei. I'm sorry, nigae de ikaper lei. The thing is that the korban that the Mitzorah brings is not for his sin. Even if you say that a person becomes a Mitzorah because he sinned, the Tsaras experience itself of getting leprosy and being forced out, in quarantine and to be on your own all the time, that is the atonement. The korban is not for atonement. It is a separate korban. It is just to allow him to be able to come back to be with the people again. But this is not a korban for atonement, so we're not looking for a korban to atone the guy. He got atonement already from his ordeal. Ve'ema nazir. I will suggest that maybe the Sarah Naisa Bifnim is for a nazir. Nazir Tameh, that when a nazir becomes Tameh, as we learned in Masechta Nazir, so then at the end he's got to start all over and he brings a korban. So the Chilek the Maisi Turim of Neyona, and there he brings birds. So again, Rav Oshai says we're looking for sins and not just for impurities. According to Rab Elazar HaKaper, who says that a Nazir is a chote because he forbade himself from enjoying wine. Does Rashi say anything? No. Chote, yeah, shetzir asma min hayayin. Right? That he discomforted himself and preventing himself from drinking wine. So Michael Meimar, so maybe the Sarah Naisa Bifnim is for a Nazir Tameh. So Reb Shimon de Omar b'mkomu muchra. Well, Reb Elazar HaKaper holds like Reb Shimon, who says that, well, we're not learning it out from here, we're learning it out the way Reb Shimon learns it out, which is, as I think we're going to get to now, which is, Amar Reb Shimon Omar says, Reb Shimon mimekomo hu muchra, that we can learn out that we're talking about, that we're talking about Tumas Mikdash v'Kodoshav from the pasuk itself by Sarah Naisa Bifnim. Hari Omer, the pasuk says v'chiper ala kodesh mitumos shel kodesh v'chulei, that the Sarah Naisa Bifnim is for tumas of kodesh. Sarah Naisa Bifnim is for Tumas Mikdash v'Kodoshav. From the pasuk itself we see. We don't need to be looking for subsets and figuring out what the subset is. No. What's it called? Tumas Mikdash v'Kodoshav. That is what the Sarah Naisa Bifnim is coming for. Shapir Ka'amar Reb Shimon. No, Reb Shimon makes a good point. Reb Shimon makes a good point, right? Did we see, right, we saw in Masechta Makis, we saw this line that was the Yelida Ime Ki Reb Shimon Teilid V'lo Lo Seilid. Right? If a person is going to be born like Reb Shimon, okay, it's Kedai, otherwise it's not Kedai. So Reb Shimon makes a good point over here. Reb Shimon Omer Mukamo Muchra, Hari Omer V'chiper Alakodesh Mitumaso Shal Kodesh Chule Shaper Kam Reb Shimon. Shimon makes a good point. Reb Yehuda Omer Lach, Reb Yehuda will respond, Hahumi Boile. No, that is to teach that that just like by the Sarah Naisa Bifnim, the blood is sprinkled in the Kodesh HaKodashim, so Hachi Naivid Behechel, we also do it in the Heichel. We sprinkle the blood on the parochas and the Heichel as well, right? It says V'chiper ala Kodesh, so it's saying that just like L'fnai v'Lefnim, also in the Heichel we sprinkle on the Kaporis. Reb Shimon Aumi V'chein Yaise Nafka. Reb Shimon says, no, that is learned from the end of the pasuk where it says V'chein Yaise L'oil Moed Asher Chinitam B'soch Tumasim. That teaches that you sprinkle the blood also on the parochas and the heichel. Rabbi Yehuda Yimei Ahi. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, from there, from V'chein Yaise, I might think from there they bring a different cow and goat and kill them and sprinkle their blood in the heichel. So Kamash Malon, and that's why we need v'chiper to say that it's not a separate cow and goat, it's the same one. Reb Shimon, Reb Shimon says, meh. When it says at the end of the pasuk, it's talking about the same animals that you go out to the heichal and you sprinkle on the parochis as well, and v'chiper is available to teach that it's talking about tumas mikdash v'kodashav. Omar Mar, we said yochol al kol tumos sheba kodesh yehei soyer ze mechaper. So is it possible that the soyer anaisa b'fnim would be mechaper for all tumas mikdash v'kodashav, even when there's a yediyah batchila and a yediyah basof? Tamalomi mi pishayim l'chol chatosom v'gomer. It says mi pishayim l'chol chatosom, and we said pishayim, there's no korban that is brought. So also chatosom, we're talking about where there's no korban brought. Maniu, and what's excluded? Yesh ba'yediyah batchila v'yesh ba'yediyah basof. That when there's a yediyah batchila and there's a yediyah basof, so then when there's a yediyah batchila and there's a yediyah basof, so then the soyer hanaisa b'fnim will not be mechaper. But hai bar korban, of course the soyer hanaisa b'fnim will not be mechaper. You have to bring a korban olive yored over there. So that's what you do. Well, what if he was eating his Suda Mafsekis right before Yom Kippur, and he's like, dag nabbit, I need to bring a korban olive yored because of tumas mikdash v'kodasha. So maybe in that scenario, we'll just say, you know what? For that, Sagadat Chamina, I may have thought to say, Nislele, that the korban olive yored, that the soyer anaisa b'fnim on Yom Kippur will be tole for him. Kamash Milan, it is not. Okay, fine. Wow, I feel like it just got really dark out. I don't know, I think there's a bunch of really big fires around Yerushalayim. Yeah, I saw it. There's really big fires. People had to abandon their cars on the highway. These fires are crazy. All right, I gotta go right there. I hope everyone's all right. Omar Mar, we said oilio minayin liyesh ba yediyah batchila ve'ein ba yediyah basof. We had then said at the end of the brisa that how do we know that sheyesh ba'yidiyah batchila ve'ein ba'yidiyah basof, that the soyer anaisa b'fnim is tole minayin Maika kashile. What's the question? Here is what the question is, right? Because we already said from pishayim and l'chochatosam that we're talking about where there's no korban, right? So therefore, yesh b'yediyah batchila, ein b'yediyah basof. He's not bringing a korban because there's no yediyah basof. He doesn't know to bring a korban. So because there's no korban, so the soyer anaisa b'fnim should be should be tolas. Okay, what exactly is the shal? We already said the whole pshayim dumya chatoim dumya de pshayim. We already did that whole thing where there's no korban. So my kakasha, what's the question? Kakasha, here's the question. Hashta de omart chatoim dumya de pshayim. Once you're saying that we're looking for a chait that's similar to a pesha, ma pshayim de la b'nei korban, af chatoim de la b'nei korban, and we say that just like by pshayim, you don't bring a korban, just like by pshayim, you don't bring or you can't bring a korban because it's b'mezid. So we're also talking about chatas is that you don't bring a korban. Okay, and we said that that's talking about yesh b'yediyah batchila ve'ein b'yediyah basof. But ema, I will suggest, you know how to learn it really? Ma pshoyim de lavnei korban le'olam. For a mazid, it's not just that you don't bring a korban now; you never bring a korban. So if chatoim de lavnei korban le'olam, maybe we're talking about chatases, sins that you never bring a korban for. Now, yesh b'yediyah batchila ve'ein b'yediyah basof. Well, if you find out about it, you will bring a korban for it, a korban olav yoreh. Umayninu. So what's the scenario where you will never bring a korban? Ein b'yediyah batchila ve'yesh b'yediyah basof. When there's no yediyah batchila and there is yediyah basof, we said that soyer regalim is mechaper. You don't have to bring a korban. The soyer regalim is mechaper. Aval yesh ba'idiyah batchila ve'ein ba'idiyah basof. But when it comes to yesh ba'idiyah batchila ve'ein ba'idiyah basof, kevin dechi misyad alei, when he ultimately eventually finds out, bar korban hu, he will have to bring a korban, ema lo lislei. I'll say that the Sarah Anaisa Bifnim is not tole. Or, but one second, if you're going to say, wait, but we already know, that has its own halachas. We already know. By ein b'idiyah batchila, yesh b'idiyah basof, we already know. Sarah naisa b'chutz. Oh, I'm sorry. I had said Sarah regalim a minute ago. No, that's for ein b'idiyah batchila or basof. I'm sorry. The Sarah naisa b'chutz is mechaper, and Yom Kippurim are mechaper for ein b'idiyah batchila v'yesh b'idiyah basof. So if you're going to say, like, why would I think that Sarah naisa b'fnim is mechaper for ein b'idiyah batchila v'yesh b'idiyah basof? We already know that Sarah naisa b'chutz is what's mechaper for ein b'idiyah batchila v'yesh b'idiyah basof. Sakadayte chamino nepuch mepuch. Well, I might think to say, no, what it's saying is taka switch it around. That sorry, anaisa b'fnim is going to be mechaper for ein b'idiyah batchila v'yesh b'idiyah basof, and sorry, anaisa b'chutz will be mechaper for yesh b'idiyah batchila v'ein b'idiyah basof. Amar kra l'chol chatoso michlad b'nei chatos ninu. Okay, so therefore the Pasuk says l'chol chatosim, that we're talking about korbanos that ultimately will lead to bring a korban chatos, i.e. yesh b'idiyah batchila ve'ein b'idiyah basof. And iskaper kapare gemure. Now we're saying that by yesh b'idiyah batchila ve'ein b'idiyah basof, so the tzara naisa b'fnim is tole. Why can't it be fully atoning? Why can't it be a full kapara? Why is it just tole? Iksiv mei chatosom. If it said from the chatos, I would say, okay, fine, it atones from the sin. But so it says lechol chatosim is talking about something that will ultimately lead to bring a korban chatos, and that means that it's just tole, and that when there's a idea basof, you're being a korban ola v'yard. So now, what exactly does that mean that it's tole? Right? There's yesh b'idiyah batchila, ve'ein b'idiyah basof. We're saying that Sarah Anaisa b'fnim is tole. It's not mechaper. It doesn't atone. It pends. What's the point of pending? Reb Zeir says, Reb Zeir lomar to say she'im meis blow oven, to say that if he dies, right? If a person, there was yesh b'idiyah batchila, ve'ein b'idiyah basof, and he dies like that, and he never found out, well then it wouldn't be held against him. What do you mean? If he died, then just dying in and of itself would be the atonement for that. Rather, says Rava, what pending accomplishes is that if there would be any yisurim, any afflictions that would come to him for violating Tumas Mikdash v'Kadashav, but since there was, he had a lapse in knowledge, so we're saying the Sarah Naisa B'fnim would pend, i.e., any afflictions that would be coming his way would be rerouted away from him. Alright, Cheve, we're going to stop here. We could go weiter shtickle, but I feel like we did a lot of work today on this brisa. We just finished working through that brisa, so I think we'll call it here for today. So yeah, we learned about the Sarah Naisa B'fnim, right? There was a lot in that Mishnah. The Sarah Naisa B'fnim, Sarah Naisa B'chutz, Sarah Regalim, Sarah Rosh Chodesh. A lot of things came up in that Mishnah. We're going to now be getting to all of those things now. Today we focused on Sarah Naisa B'fnim and how we know that is talking about Yesh B'idiyah Batchila Ve'en B'idiyah Basof. Peace out.